Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 23rd session of the Bellingham City Council. We have three items, we have three announcements. The first is on Monday, April 6th at 7 p.m. in council chambers, there will be a public hearing to consider amendments to the Samish Neighborhood Plan and Bellingham Municipal Code to rezone Area 9 of the Samish neighborhood. On Monday, April 6th at 7 p.m. in the council chambers, there will be a public hearing to consider amendments to the Samish Neighborhood Plan and Bellingham Municipal Code to rezone 801 Samish Way in the Area 4 of the Samish neighborhood. And on Wednesday, April 22nd, the annual Lake Whatcom Management Program Joint Councils and Commissions meeting will take place 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. in the council chambers. It will be preceded by an open house at 6 p.m. in the lobby of City Hall. Would Lori Province lead us in this little flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Terry Borneman.
Here.
Dan Hamill.
Here.
Jean Knudsen.
Here.
Michael Lillquist.
Here.
Roxanne Murphy.
Here.
Pinky Vargas.
Here.
Jack Weiss.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, 50-minute public comment period. I'll read the first three names. Wendy Stephenson, Lori Province, and Teresa Erickson. Linda's got the 3-minute timer, and away we go.
Hello, my name is Wendy Stephenson. I was here 2 weeks ago to talk about the Water Quality Standards letter, and I'm here again to say thank you for moving forward, letting the governor know that we need better. We deserve better. We need to protect all of the people. So I want to say thank you, first and foremost, for moving ahead with that. I have a friendly amendment to your letter. As I looked at it and I read it, I see that the last paragraph, that's where you're really going to give your punch, right? This is what we want. This is the conclusion. So the second to last sentence says, clean water and fish that are safe to eat cannot be accomplished overnight, but that does not mean that we should settle for dirtier water and unsafe fish. That sounds like a great closing line. But then why did we go on to say we need to have serious discussions at the state level about funding assistance for stormwater projects, and ecology should consider establishing an achievable compliance schedule? That's true. It's a little wonky. I'm not sure it's your last sentence. You talk about the difficulty in the paragraph right above it. So I think you guys need to edit that, because the message is not, this is difficult. The message is, Governor and ecology, we think you're moving in the right direction, but we don't think you have it exactly right, and this is how you're going to make it right. So I'm suggesting some editing. And lastly, I'm so happy I live in the city of Bellingham right now. Not only are you standing up for water quality, but you're also considering taking a stand on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and I think that's very important, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Wendy. Lori Province.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. My name is Lori Province. I live at 2501 West Street, Bellingham, 98225. And I would like to thank the chairman for giving me the opportunity to prove that the important things are learned in kindergarten, like the Pledge of Allegiance. So I am rising today to talk to you. I don't need to talk to you. I just need to say thank you, all of you, for considering a resolution that's very important to the future of local governance and the ability of our local elected officials to lead and guide our communities. You have put the resolution in opposition of Fast Track and the TPP on your agenda. I just want to say gratefully that I appreciate the statement that you're making. I honor you all for recognizing the importance of local legislation, and I encourage you all to speak up and speak about the things, the lack of ability to legislate for our local communities were TPP and the fast track to go forward. So just thank you very much.
Thank you, Lori. Mark Lowry and Teresa Erickson and Irene Morgan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, council, mayor. I too would like to stand here today and say thank you very much for bringing forward a resolution considering the opposition to fast track for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I would rise in support of the resolution very wholeheartedly. I'm standing here today exercising one of the most fundamental rights of free men and women in a democratic society, and I'm petitioning my government for redress. If Fast Track Promotion Authority is granted to TPP, this will not be possible for us in Congress. Our congressmen will not be able to debate the provisions of the biggest single trade deal in the history of commerce. We won't have an opportunity to amend it. We won't have an opportunity to vote on sections of it. It'll be an up or down, take it or leave it proposition. This is not how we have always engaged with our government. This is not the American political process. So I applaud you for bringing forward this resolution in opposition. I think this means something. I think it is a big deal. And I very much appreciate the opportunity to take this mic and speak in support of the resolution. And thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mark. Teresa Erickson.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Erickson. I live at 2914 Cottonwood Avenue, and I'm going to read this statement, which is totally unlike me, but I want to say everything just right. First of all, I want to thank you very much for your careful consideration of the financial matters concerning partnership with Whatcom County to build a new, safe, and modern jail. These are important matters, but tonight I want to speak to you to the human aspect of building a new jail. Like you, like many of you, I am a parent, but unlike you, my son works for the Whatcom County Jail and has done so for over 10 years. Like other county employees, he is a dedicated civil servant, and like other corrections officers, he does his very best to see that everyone is kept safe while they're in the jail. Under ideal conditions, safety in a jail is a tall order, but in our current jail, it is extremely difficult. The building is deteriorating, so officers have to ask themselves questions like, has someone in this cell pried off building parts that could be used as weapons against me or other inmates? Or have illegal drugs or weapons been smuggled in through broken windows? These are real situations that have happened very recently in our jail. Corrections officers deal with situations that most of us are really happy to leave with them. They work long hours with mandatory overtime, so they are often tired, and they are responsible for the well-being of all the inmates on their floor. Federal guidelines say that jail is at full capacity when it's 80% full. Our jail runs well over 100% capacity. This means that a young person who may make a stupid choice that lands them in jail could possibly be housed with those who will prey upon them. The same goes for the mentally ill or those who are considered weak or different in any way. Officers will always do their best to keep everyone safe in such appalling conditions, but sometimes safety does suffer. Officers also need to keep themselves safety. While performing their duties, they need to watch their backs to be sure they're not attacked. When they are assaulted, and yes, officers are assaulted on the job, the question becomes, how soon will backup get there? There's really no clear answer for that question in our jail. Are the security cameras working well enough to see the trouble? Is the nearest available officer on a different floor? Or are the elevators working well? I hope you begin to see some of the difficulties that they're facing every day. A new jail will not solve all our social problems, but it will go a long way toward correcting a terrible situation. It will allow for humanely housing those within our criminal justice system, improving health, communications, and educational opportunities. In all honesty, the animals in the Humane Society are housed under better conditions than the inmates are at our jail. Officers will not have to worry about building parts becoming weapons or vital systems failing. Things like toilets overflowing and doors working and summer temperatures in the upper 80s and 90s. They will be able to perform their jobs better, and they'll be able to keep the vulnerable away from those who would prey upon them. Their stress levels will be greatly reduced. Their families will not have to worry so much about their well-being. Families and inmates will also be happier knowing that their loved ones are being kept safe as possible. Thank you. I'm asking you to vote yes for a new jail.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Irene Morgan, Joy Gilfillan, and George Dyson.
Good evening. Irene Morgan. I live out in the county on the Pole Road. Been there for 69 years. I've been thinking, and I've realized that our county government, the executive, Mayor Kelly and the sheriff, all the cities and the governments of our community do a really good job of taking care of us, the public. What I also realize, because I started the Restorative Community Coalition 8 years ago, is that they're taking care of us and doing business. And what we find is that during that business taking care of, a lot of our clients are not being cared for. There's not enough money to go around. And part of it is because a lot of it goes to this jail that we're proposing. And I, too, know how dangerous the jail is. I've been there. I've looked at it. And I thank your son for working there and all the other people who do. It's not safe for them. It's not safe for our inmates. However, I think because we have seen so many wonderful programs across the nation and the world that we don't need to build that big jail. We can do things differently. And one of your members earlier today spoke about all the other things that we could do that would take people out of the jail system. This jail is the largest expansion and the largest expenditure in our county's history, $122 million, including the sheriff's office, which is all taxpayer money. So I think the public needs to be able to make their decisions with all the information available to them. This tax will not go away, from what I understand. This 0.2% will be with us forever. So it's not just us. It's our great-great-great-grandkids. I think that's something that really needs to be considered and thought about. And as I understand it, each bed will cost $80,000. I'd like to think about taking 5 or 10 of those beds and giving that money to some of our people and our service agencies, and taking the homeless off the street, building the homeless communities downtown. The plans have already been delivered to the city and everyone. So let's do something different with our tax dollars. It's time to do it differently. And, I've been told that this is a done deal. I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Joy Gilfillan, George Dyson, Joseph McDonald.
I've been a Whatcom County resident, Bellingham resident, since the 70s. My name is Joy Gilfillan. I'm the president of the Restorative Community Coalition, and I honor each one of you for actually standing up to be politicians at this point in history. And I honor anybody who is standing up to be an officer-in-chief of any kind of an organization. And I honor people who are working to try to make our world a better place. We are in a mess. We are truly in a mess. We're in a mess in America. We are in a mess right now in Whatcom County, in my opinion, around the sales tax initiative and the movement to invest $122.5 million in capital improvement projects. That is taxpayer money. That's not just county money. It's not just sales tax money. It's not just a corporation's money. We're talking about an investment of $122.5 million. That is big business. And that is going to fuel the largest expansion of government that I've ever seen in history. I don't know how many of you have actually read the final environmental impact statement. I have. That sheriff's office will accommodate 300 staff. That's a lot of staff. Staff at that level of expense, a lot of those people are making $150,000 a year, plus retirement. A lot of these people who work for the sheriff's office will end up having retirement that is very, very high. And you know what? I was going to be a cop at one point back in college days. I looked at the industry, and you know what? They have a tough road to hoe, no question about it. It's scary. And some of the people that are on the streets are a mess, and they're really scary when they get hyped up on the drugs and you can't pay attention and, you know, things go nuts. I get it. But that doesn't mean that we need to build a huge, massive facility when there are dozens of alternatives. We have been trying to speak for 5 years to the county council, to the jail task force, to the public about alternatives to jail, a completely different economic paradigm, and we have been shut down time after time after time. We are taxpayers. I represent a nonprofit corporation whose responsibility is to serve the taxpayers of this county, whether they are inmates, cops, civilians, businessmen. I'm also a businessman. I've been a business person my entire life since I grew up as a little girl. I started out selling manure at the age of 8. I have never, ever left my roots in free enterprise. And $122.5 million, if I was going to assess that as a business economic investment, I would be looking at what is the return on investment to taxpayers? What's my internal rate of return over time? What is the alternatives? What's my cost? What's my opportunity cost if I don't look at alternatives? What is the return on investment of wet houses? What's the return on investment of a Restore a Life Center? What's the return on investment on all these things that we've been trying to bring forward to the public? We need public disclosure. We need public debate. We need real analysis of the financial aspects of this, and we need real analysis of what it's going to cost us taxpayers if we buy this thing and it's overbuilt. When you start looking at the cost and the leverage that the people have, when you overbuild a jail and then we are fiscally unable to meet it and we don't fill up that jail like a motel, it's going to cost us, folks, and we have a responsibility to the taxpayers to do it. I'm not saying don't vote for it. I'm saying let's have a public debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joy. George Dyson, Joseph McDonald. I guess all our time's up now, so we can go home now. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to be here. I think the last time I was here was to speak to the agreement to the waterfront master plan that you were signing with the port, at which time I think in brief what I said was, I know you have a gun to your head and you have to sign this thing, but please take it to a divorce lawyer first. And now, March 17th, the master development agreement has been released that plan is to sign it March 31st. Now we know why. You should have seen a divorce lawyer. I own property across from the waterfront, a 2,600 square foot building built in 1928. I'm under a 35-foot height limit. I am assessed $30 a square foot for that property, and I've paid my taxes for 26 years. Now the sort of in your name, you say this is the port's business, but your partners, the granary building, so that's 49,500 square feet of warehouse built to 300 pounds per square foot floor loading. With a exemption from the height restriction and everything else is being sold for $7.30 a square foot. I think that's wrong. I think if you look at the deal, you as us city taxpayers are obligated to buy back parkland at $25 a square foot. There's some differential there that's wrong, and I think it should be questioned. And of course it's being sold to foreign developers. So 10 years ago, just rerun the history, the port made a massive mistake. They paid about $500 million too much for that property. With Harcourt, it's the perfect marriage, because Harcourt made a similar mistake, but they got the National Asset Management Agency of Ireland to bail them out for several hundred million pounds. And the port has got us to bail them out for, it looks like, about $200 million. And I wouldn't question that, except it's people like me who are on the hook for that. And it's not really a partnership when it's not a negotiation. It's very one-sided. The port cannot give that land away without all these concessions from the city that we're going to be paying for. If they don't pay those impact fees, somebody else will. The next developer will. The terms that Harcourt is offering, if you put the granary on Craigslist for $200,000, you'd have all kinds of local people trying to do really realistic, immediate good things with it. I urge you to try and speak up because this deal is going to be signed March 31st. Research what's happening to Harcourt lately. BBC, just 4 weeks ago, they're restructuring their business following a review of costs. Belfast Telegraph, 17th February. The sudden move by Titanic Quarter comes after loans relating to the company were sold by Ulster Bank, so they're in deep trouble. They're now owned by Davidson Kemper, a U.S. vulture fund. It goes on and on. We're getting into a really bad marriage. It's going to be very, very hard to get out of. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Joseph McDonald and Richard Manival, and then we'll take anybody who hasn't signed up. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Joseph McDonald. As you know, I have a speech impediment, and I'm here to talk about animal control. You know I use the horn to chase away dogs. This is the most humane way to deal with uncontrolled dogs, but owners don't like it and can become confrontational. It would not be a big deal if owners didn't make it a big deal. With the potential for violence, I cannot let it slide. Last September, after using it, I asked Animal Control to talk with the owner and never received a reply. They claimed they talked to the owners, avoided my phone calls afterwards until I gave a speech to the city about it. This is a claim I disagree with and hope you question yourself. People have the choice and responsibility to leash their dog. I don't have the choice of dealing with their unleashed dog. I wrote Whatcom Humane Society a letter with a map of my perimeter. I want council to advocate for me and insist that my perimeter is patrolled because animal control seems to be out of the public eye. You might say to yourself, what's the big deal? This is a dog-friendly city, so what if people don't leash their dogs? It all of a sudden becomes a big deal when you get in a confrontation with one, and I've had several. It's a different story when you are a recipient of someone's dog's aggressive behavior. 6 months ago, after saying because of possible confrontation with an owner, this is an important issue that deserves your attention. With the exception of Roxanne Murphy, who showed concern for the issue, City Council was absolutely no help in advocating for me to animal control. The problem I have with people who walk their dogs with a leash, without a leash, and it doesn't mess with me, is someone else will see them and say to themselves, they're walking their dog without a leash, I can walk my dog without a leash, and that dog might mess with me. In a subtle way, animal control and city council is encouraging people to break the law no matter who they harass in the process. I feel I attempted to twist animal control's arm into apologizing. I hope they realize I've become more outspoken towards them because of that. As I've said before, all the speeches I've written would not have been necessary if animal control didn't prove not to do its job. It really is a matter of life and death, not from the dogs, but because of the owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Richard Manival.
Good evening, council members and the public. My name is Richard Manival. I live at 2127 West Birch Street in the Alabama Hill neighborhood. It's a pretty peaceful place, but unfortunately last week alone I had to keep an eye on two teenagers. They're kind of notoriously known for vandalizing the area. You might find that surprising for Alabama Hill. Well, upon observing them one night, I noticed that they had sledgehammers on their shoulders and were about to take some action, but they observed that I was observing them, so they stayed on their property. They call that a little bit of a crime prevention. Unfortunately, many times over the years, I've had to do things like that. It's kind of interesting. Nobody's threatened me yet. So far, I've been lucky. Back in 2003, Gene, you might remember, I got appointed to the Whatcom County Law and Justice Council. And I went to my first meeting in November. You know, I've been involved with the Bellingham Police Department. I've learned a lot about crime prevention over the decades. And I went to that meeting expecting I would know what they were going to say, but I didn't. By the time that meeting was over, Sheriff Elfo comes up to me and he says, kind of a different world now, isn't it, for you, Richard? And I said, yeah, sure is. I felt like I'd been transported from one area of the world to another. It's amazing what you learn when you sit down and listen to people that you hire and you elect and explain to you what's going on. I'm sitting there listening to judges, the sheriff, the police chiefs, the court clerks, and ironically, other than what many people don't realize, I was listening to many professionals in the medical as well as the mental health community. It's amazing how much we do in this community, and a lot of us just do not know that. This community is very robust when it comes to alternative programs and dealing with offenders. I mean, take a look at me, crime prevention, stopping the crime from happening. But think about the level of service that we have provided over the decades. And frankly, if you look at what we're doing today, some of those methods are very old, they're very ancient. I've done a lot of research looking back in earlier times and what they were doing in ancient history. And it's amazing how they were doing those things like we are today. There are programs, like in district court. I asked them to write an opinion piece. They published it in the Herald. It was about an alternative program in district court. You might have seen it. I hope you did. I know I sent out copies to all the council members, both city and counties, all the cities, and asked them to read it and learn what kind of program district court alone has. And that's just one of many things that we have going on. We not only have things, kitty corner over here, and the depth of knowledge we have over there, and the history those men and women got over there in that court building, as well as in our municipal court building, is tremendous. Some of these men and women, not only are they teaching us right here, some of those people have actually been recognized to teach and asked to be teaching at universities around the world. We got some remarkable people, and I encourage this city to bring some of those people forward. And one final note, ask the judges what their days are like and what they see. Invite them into this room. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, anybody else that hasn't spoke, please come up. Or hasn't signed up, sorry. Give us your name.
Hi, my name is Kathy Leathers. I live at 810 Mason Street, and I'm concerned that the new jail might be considered a done deal. The public really, since we're going to be paying for it, really needs to find out if there are alternatives and exactly how much it's going to cost. There are alternatives. The U.S. has the most incarcerated people of any country, any civilized country in the world. And in other places, in other states, they're doing restorative justice. They're lowering how many people have to go to prison or jail. And I think that's something that we need to do, or we may end up with a jail that can't be kept filled. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Come ahead.
Thank you. My name is Bill Angel. I live at 656 Kirkview Place in Bellingham. It's in the Sterling Drive neighborhood, in case any of you know where that is. It's a little pocket neighborhood just north, I guess, or east of the freeway, across from Jerry Chambers Chevrolet, just above the two roundabouts on Northwest Avenue. It's a tidy little neighborhood. It has some interesting access issues, especially, I guess, egress issues onto Northwest Avenue. The roundabout there, the one to the north, provided us a bit of a respite from the tearing up Northwest Avenue that we had experienced in the past. My concern today, and what I'd like to address with you, is that there's a building proposal for apartments for 150 units right on the corner of Northwest and Sterling. And it'll provide some needed housing, I'm sure. The current plan includes ingress or entry and egress onto Sterling Drive, and for many cars. So that's what the current plan is. I know that the proposed plan and the preferred plan of the developer included a couple accesses onto Northwest Drive directly, or at least an entry from Northwest Drive, and then one to the, an entry and exit farther north on Northwest. But the concern is that, we already have a really hard time getting out onto Northwest Avenue and heading left down into the roundabout from our street. And our concern is if we have, 200 more cars in the morning and coming out onto our way, and at other times during the day, we're going to really be jammed up at that location. And we've taken our share, and we're willing to take our share of development. We've had the Sterling Meadows apartment complex in that neighborhood, and a welcome neighbor, something we've helped shape the development of while that was going through process. And I know we're mid-process. They're about to submit their application to the city, and I think it's so we'll be providing our public comment at that time. But I think it's an important aspect for that neighborhood to make sure that we have the access and to our community as best as we can, and we think that there are potentially workable solutions that wouldn't include all those cars preferentially coming out onto Sterling Drive. So I ask you to maybe think about that as it comes around. I'm sure we'll have more of our members coming in to talk about the issue and work through the process. So
Okay,
thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, last speaker tonight.
Good evening. Steve Harris, 1532 Fruitland Drive in the city of Bellingham. Madam Mayor, council members, thanks for your service, and part of why I'm here is to commend you on making difficult choices for the city that I live in. Just recently, you took the tough choice of raising our property tax levy rate by 1/10 to generate revenue for the needs of the city and the basic purposes of government, which in my mind, number one, is public safety. You've done that and you've made these tough choices, yet at the same time, we have Whatcom County for at least a decade. Every year, they brag about not having to raise property tax levy increases. Yet at the same time, they're asking us to make up for it in sales tax. So they get their supporters, the fat cat millionaires who have tons of assets and property. They don't ever have to pay an increased levy rate. They pay increases in assessed valuation, of course. But it's the regressive tax structure we have in Washington State that you all are aware of hurts who? The sales tax, the poor, the most. It hurts businesses because more and more you're seeing, if you look at the generation of revenue and sales tax in Skagit County, our Canadian brothers to the north going south and bypassing us. So what I'm asking you is, as you evaluate and you look at alternatives to a new jail facility that Whatcom County has known we've need for over a decade, it's just been falling apart. In 2004, we passed 1/10 of 1% to build a new jail. But the last moment it got changed, the language, and pay for what we currently have. So right now, the 1/10 is generating $3.5 million of revenue. But if you look at the current county budget, the general fund contribution is actually going down. So they're supplanting the money. So the only way I would ever possibly suggest that you guys buy into a sales tax increase, and quite frankly, at this point in time, after this many years, I don't know how we'll raise the revenue to build a new facility. But it's got to have an expiration date, because they'll just continue to supplant general fund dollars and use it for other purposes, while that sales tax money, it doesn't make any sense to me. I think you guys agree, sales tax is regressive. It hurts the poor the most. Yet lately, over the years, we seem to be, that's our first choice. We'll just raise the sales tax. We'll do that because everybody pays equally. No, we don't. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, one final speaker. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name's Daniel Myrick. I've lived here for 8 years in Bellingham, and I live all over Bellingham. It's all my home. I want you to consider very thoroughly this idea about a jail, because I've noticed a couple of people have voiced a concern that we might not be able to fill it. I'd like to voice a concern that our endeavor to fill that jail will oppress people and deprive them of their civil rights on a scale that we are already seeing is wrong in Bellingham. To build a jail is to say we're building a business out of humiliating, judging, and tormenting people as though we were born from our mother's womb superior and we stood in a position any point in our life to judge another man while he was having his life. I watched last week as a man who was supposed to be afforded in my home country equal protection under the law, who had his property stolen from him by a man who owned a business. And when the police were involved, the police refused to issue a ticket to the person who had taken his property, and he had not received it all back. So I'm even going to question the ability of our law enforcement to make rational decisions as to who they're serving as citizens of Bellingham. Is it only the tax-paying people? Is it neglected that homeless or poor are not consumers or haven't ever paid taxes in their life? Are they not deserving of protection under our law in Bellingham? I watched an atrocity the other day in my hometown. This is my hometown. I chose it. And I can choose any town in America, for I'm a birth citizen of this country. And I have every right to call this my home. I also have every right to equal protection under the law and to invoke my civil rights. And you literally have institutions here stripping people of those rights. They're looked at as fodder for a system that gains them revenue, that validates their paycheck, which is a paycheck out of the misery of the people that we have found the scorn and the scourge of our society, that we need to make employment and paychecks out of this. I think we're a more evolved race of humans than this. I know other nations and other parts of this globe have much more humane systems. One lies only about 40 miles north of here. There are tremendous examples of how we can treat one another like human beings, not monetary dollars. We have existence credits built up. For as long as I've existed, 50 years tomorrow on this earth, my existence merits me my needs, which are food, shelter, and clothing. And anyone who keeps those from me is an evildoer who's committing crimes against humanity right here in our fair city. So I'd like all of you in this room who have your head in the dollar to pull it out of there and look at people as though they're your son and your daughter and your relatives, because as townsfolk, that's exactly what they are. They are your extended family. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you. We went through 18 names in that amount of time. We really appreciate your respecting the time limit. Okay, we will now go on to our reports of committees. The first committee is Public Works and Public Safety. Terry Borneman's the chair.
Thank you, Gene. We had 4 items before our committee today. The first was a summary of the fire department's division services. I'm not going to go over everything, but it was a really good report about what's happening with the fire department. Encourage people to watch it. I will just mention a couple things though that is going on, because it under training, this training becomes a big issue. The fire department's going to have a company training academy. They're putting on a captain's promotional exam. They've got 17 candidates within the fire department, our fire department, that's going to be attending that. And they've got a recruit academy coming up, and they're expected to hire 8 to 12 people because of turnovers in the fire department. And so that was for information only today, and they will, Bill Newbold will be coming back on some reports of some of the other issues, like the consolidation issue with the Marietta Fire Department. So that was for information only today. The second issue was a bid award for the Chestnut Bay at Railroad Bridge Rehabilitation, bid number 6B-2015. The Chestnut Bay at Railroad Bridge project consists of rehabilitating the deteriorated L-shaped bridge over the Bellingham Northern Santa Fe tracks at the intersection of Chestnut Street and Bay Street. The project includes deck rehabilitation, new paving, sidewalk replacement, water system and storm drain improvements, bicycle facilities, and throw fence installation. The city received 3 sealed bids, which were opened on March 5th, 2015. The lowest responsive and responsible bid was submitted by Strider Construction Company in the sum of $1,577,207, inclusive of sales tax on applicable bid items. It's getting late already tonight. The engineer's estimate was $2,450,830. The committee recommended approval, and I so move.
Second. Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Jack?
I was wondering if I could ask Ted a question. Given the fact that the bid came in a really positive way for the city compared to the engineer's estimate, is there any chance that we could use, either in a separate bid or as part of this bid, to be able to design a more decorative throw fence at this point, instead of putting in a utilitarian throw fence and then have to replace it later on for even more money?
I think there's two issues there. Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. First is we wouldn't have time to get that approved through FHWA and WashDOT, and in fact, it's not likely that they would approve using the federal money for the decorative fence, and most of this is being funded through a federal grant. We do have local money on it, and we could always use our local money to put in a decorative throw fence. The main reason why we didn't do that was we were waiting for the waterfront process to move forward and to have the theming for the infrastructure of the waterfront determined, so that this being kind of a gateway to the waterfront, at least overlooking the waterfront, we would try to match the decorative fence that hopefully we'll install at a future date on the Bay Chestnut Bridge with some of the improvements on the infrastructure installed at the waterfront. So there's really two reasons why that may not work. One is the funding, and the second is really just the timing of what exactly the design would be for that decorative fence.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ted. Okay, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0.
Okay. The next item, let's see. Yeah. The next item we had before us was a bid award for the 2014 sewer replacement project, project number EU0169, bid number 7B-2015. The annual project includes rehabilitation of existing sanitary sewer piping, manhole, and clean-out via trenchless pipe and open cut replacement methods. The project also includes rehabilitating, relining existing manholes and side sewer services to reduce inflow and infiltration. The work locations for this year's projects are throughout the city. Vicinity maps are attached in the packet. The city received 2 bids which were open on March 12th, 2015. The lowest responsive and responsible bid was submitted by Faber Construction Corporation in the sum of $1,291,918.01, including Washington State sales tax. The engineer's estimate was $1,203,561.18, including Washington State sales tax. The committee recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0.
Okay, the last item we had before us today was a letter to the Department of Ecology regarding water quality standards. We had a pretty good discussion about the letter. The administration had recommended a change to the letter that was in the packet. We had discussions about it and accepted the changes minus one part of a sentence. The existing letter that we recommended approval is sitting on our desk, and with those changes, we recommend approval. The committee recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Michael?
I believe Kelly's name is now added to the bottom of here. I assume we have no problem with that. That wasn't discussed earlier, but I personally think it'd be a nice idea.
No, because we were approving the letter. She just chose one to sign on to it.
All right,
so
way to go.
that's great.
Roxanne.
Strengthens the letter.
Maybe this is a question directly for Michael as the author of the letter, but did we want to consider Wendy's feedback about the very last sentence?
I actually had the exact same idea. Rhetorically, like my English professor would tell me, that's a much better way to do it. There's actually a good reason why that last sentence actually belongs in the previous paragraph at the end of that one. It'd be a nice thing to do, to improve the writing. I don't know if it's that important, though. I mean, I think it would be better.
Well, if it's better, we can amend it. It's not hard to do.
Or can we just approve it with
The last-
with giving authorization to Michael to improve the language?
That's fine. That's okay.
Got to be sent out today
Yeah,
by midnight.
that's another thing I should mention.
By midnight, it has to
The
be
comment
postmarked,
deadline
so-
is today at midnight.
Well, then-
And I've talked with Brian in the mayor's office. He says he'd be happy to, if we approve a letter, to just email it before he goes home tonight.
Okay. You can do that for us, Brian? Okay.
And so as I understand it, the idea would be to just move that one sentence
Yeah.
into the other paragraph. Great.
Okay.
What's this, you want to refresh on the sentence?
You have
I
it.
don't know.
You have it,
Brian
Brian?
Heinrich, Mayor's Office. No, I have it. I agree with Michael on the edit. It's a good one. I also just wanted to just briefly point out, since you are approving some changes, that on the first page, we reference the City of Bellingham submits rather than just the City Council,
right.
owing to the mayor's signature. And then there were just a handful of minor edits. I'd be happy to walk you through those. They're minor in nature, don't change the content at all. It's
We'll trust your judgment, but
all right. It's easy enough to
Thank
change
you.
that sentence as well. No problem.
thank you. Okay, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, everybody. Planning committee,
Yeah.
excuse me,
That was the
Mr.
last
Weiss.
item.
Also in the letter, hold on 1 second. Oh, it's been fixed. Okay. Okay, thank you. This morning we had 2 items. The first item was an ordinance creating an incentive program for innovative, affordable, low-income home ownership projects in single-family and multifamily residential zoning districts. The incentive program for innovative, affordable, low-income homeowner projects would replace an ordinance first approved in 2004 and which then expired on December 31st, 2014. This ordinance would establish incentives for development of owner-occupied housing for low-income households with restrictions on resale. Incentives would include up to 50% density increase and other modifications to zoning requirements, including minimum lot size, street frontage, setbacks, parking, lot coverage, and usable open space. Housing would have to be affordable to those earning less than 80% of the area median income, also known as AMI, with resale restrictions ensuring continued affordability. Projects must meet design review standards outlined in the proposed ordinance. Today we had a fairly robust discussion on this proposal. David Stallheim had presented the staff's recommendations and laid out the issues that came out of the public hearing that we had a month ago. And I presented an alternative proposal that basically took the affordability opportunity, which in the proposed ordinance was to have affordability of the affordable housing at 50 years, and which was a change from the permanent affordability provisions in the demonstration ordinance that was approved in 2004. The proposal that I laid out was a mechanism where we could be able to retain both the permanent affordability and the 50-year affordability and provide different incentives in order to meet those particular attributes. So we had a discussion about that. We had quite a bit of a discussion, and what we ultimately asked the staff to do was to come back to the committee and provide us with more information on what the advantages and disadvantages or the unintended consequences would be of having a 2-track system versus 1 track that would be just for 50-year affordability. We also had come to an agreement and recommendations that a provision that was presented in the public hearing that we would exclude any home that was located within a historic district from being demolished in order to accomplish this incentive program, that you wouldn't be able to take the incentive if you ended up demolishing a historic home or a home in a historic district. We did agree with that, and that will be part of the recommendation when it comes before council. We had a motion to deal with transit issues that currently in the proposal, any project that would come forward that was within 1/4 mile of a WTA bus line would be eligible for this incentive. A motion was made to eliminate that as a restriction and have no transit-related restrictions at all. And that passed on a mixed recommendation, and we'll have further discussion on that, I'm sure. We had an agreement to not include Lake Padden watershed as part of this proposal, as an exemption, that we could go and theoretically go and have projects in the Lake Padden watershed. I'm sorry. And finally, there was we discussed the issues surrounding the use of the ordinance in urban villages, especially in the residential transition zones, and I think we were all in agreement with providing that ability. So it will come back to the planning committee when the planning staff has had the opportunity to work on the two-track proposal and some of the other items that we did discuss, and we will most likely, in 2 or 4 weeks, we'll have another planning committee to talk about this. So that was our first item. Our second item, and that was for information at this point, our second item was a docket process for the 2015-2016 comprehensive plan amendment requests. The city has an established process for reviewing requests to amend the Bellingham Comprehensive Plan. The staff discussed changes to that process that we got a report on today. In essence, what's happening is that on an annual basis, we receive docket requests to change zoning in town and provide changes either to the neighborhood plan or to the comprehensive plan for specific zones within the city. And we have a deadline, and we process those, and it comes before the city council, and we either docket and push forward the process for those particular proposals, or we don't. And that's been on a calendar basis. Because of the comprehensive plan update for the next 20 years is taking up quite a bit of staff time, and because we don't have very many docket requests for this year, there was a request by the staff that we allow for a delay on the application deadline so that the staff could continue working on the comp plan update without harming the entire docket process. Our committee agreed to that approach and provided direction to say that we were okay with it. I'm assuming that the council is okay with it as well. But that was the staff direction that we provided. So with that, end of committee.
Thank you, Jack. We go to Finance and Personnel, and Viva Las Vargas is the chair of that one.
Thanks, Gene. We had 2 items in front of us today, both budget amendments. The first one is the Wacom 911 Executive Board approved the addition of 1 technical support application specialist to assist with the installation of a new CAD system and a new 911 phone center system, and the addition of 1 new radio console. This position is funded from the Wacom Public Safety Dispatch Fund, and although approved by the board, the position was not documented in the city 2015-16 budgeting process. And we did have Chief Cook here today, who talked a little bit about the approval of the budget and said that this has been an ongoing discussion. They just weren't prepared for the numbers to be in the budget as so it wasn't quite a surprise to us. We knew this was coming. And committee did recommend to approve, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 6-0-1.
Second item was an ordinance amending the 2015 budget authorizing the purchase of 6 new ambulances for $997,181.44. In the fall of 2014, the fire department contracted with Braun Northwest for the construction of 6 basic life supports aid cars, and all 6 ambulances will be received by the end of March. Our loan impact is for 10 years, and our annual payments are $110,000 plus change. Our committee recommended approval, and I so move.
Second again.
Motion been made and seconded. Jack?
Do we know what the interest rate is on this loan?
Where's Mr. Hinshaw?
Let me look and see if it's on the...
Brian's not here, but...
Okay.
I'm looking for the invoice. I actually do not see an interest rate on here, so I do not know the answer.
Yep.
It's not...
We'll vote, and then he can tell us. Okay. I don't think so. Okay, all those in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 5-0. No, wait a minute. Did you vote, Terry?
I voted aye.
Aye. 6-0. 6-1, excuse me. Sorry about that. Okay. Thank you.
I voted against this.
Oh, you did this morning. Okay.
For
Right.
ever since inception.
The question was asked, the interest rate on the loan for the ambulances.
Yeah, the interest rate for the loan on the ambulance is about 2.16%.
Change your vote, Jack. No, just kidding.
10 years.
Okay.
So we went out this past year with the state bonds, and they roll all the smaller municipalities together into one large issuance, and rates are at a very favorable point in time right now, so it was a good loan rate.
Okay, that's not the reason for my...
No, I know. You've been consistent with this.
The reason is basically I don't believe that we should be buying all at the same time. We should be staggering them.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Pinky. We now go to Lake Whatcom Reservoir Natural Resources. Dan Hamill's the chair.
Thank you, Gene. The Lake Whatcom Policy Group, consisting of representatives from the Lake Whatcom Sewer and Water District, the Whatcom County Council, the Sudden Valley Community Association, and the Bellingham City Council meet on a regular basis to discuss policies regarding Lake Whatcom. The last meeting was on March 16th, and during that meeting, staff reviewed comments received to date via public meetings, mail, email, and provided responses to many of the comments, including requests for additional program budget information and funding sources. Staff will add a table listing funding sources for different sections of the plan. There's also a presentation discussion of program performance measures. An action item will be added to the plan to further examine which measures are most useful for regular reporting or use in a performance dashboard. There's also a presentation by Dr. Matthews, Robin Matthews, from the Western Washington University Institute for Watershed Studies, or IWS. IWS was founded in 1963 and has been monitoring the lake ever since that time. Since 2009, the monitoring program has been expanded to also include measurement of water flow and sediment in creeks during major storm events. Chlorophyll, turbidity, plankton, and lake water clarity are regularly monitored. Dr. Matthews pointed out when the temperature stratification occurs during spring, summer, and fall, the oxygen levels may be depleted in the hypolimnium or bottom layer of the lake if there is substantial biological activity located in the deeper part of the lake. She also indicated that phosphorus is the major limiting nutrient affecting algae growth. When phosphorus from stormwater enters the lake, it contributes to algae blooms and consequent low oxygen. Many species of fish need from 4 to 6 milligrams per liter of oxygen and are impacted on low dissolved oxygen to thrive. The policy group and staff briefly discussed the agenda for the April 22nd Lake Whatcom Cooperative Management Program Annual Joint Councils and Commissions meeting. The three councils will be asked by staff to take a vote to approve the 2015 to 19 plan at that meeting. The next policy group meeting will be held on April 13th, 2015 at 2:30 p.m. City of Bellingham Fireplace Room, Municipal Court Building, 625 Halleck Street. Questions? End of committee.
Thank you, Dan. The next committee is Community Economic Development. Michael Lillquist, Chair.
Thanks, Gene. We had one item for the Community Economic Development Committee today. It was a presentation of the 1% for the Arts program. Staff provided an overview of the 1% of the Arts concept and introduced a possible framework for the city's 1% program. A percent for the arts program requires that a qualifying large capital project allocates a 1% of the eligible funds for the incorporation or purchase of public artwork or decorative or artistic features in that project. Staff was seeking direction from the City Council today on whether to draft an implementing ordinance for consideration at a later date. The committee unanimously did give that direction to go ahead and try to develop such a 1% program. For those of you who drive along the highways, you've already seen the state's version of this. If there's decorative prints on the walls or those tulips on the bridge down in Mount Vernon, it's those sort of decorative features that are added to large capital projects, or, for example, the decorative railings that Jack was talking about. It's the ways of making our large concrete projects not so impersonal and improving our community. I think that's the only thing we handle this afternoon, and that completes the report.
Thank you, Michael. We now go to the committee. Sorry, Pinky. You got to stick it out.
I just wanted to add that I did ask if legality provided that we could state a preference for local designers, architects, and artists be implemented in this ordinance.
Okay, thank you. We will now go to committee of the whole. We had 6 items. The first item is the project update and opportunity zones. The City Council directed staff to complete a list of current potential redevelopment incentives for targeted geographical areas, urban villages, or forms of development, affordable housing, and develop recommendations for expanding, improving, and/or implementing these incentives. These recommendations have been drafted for review. The meeting will provide a review of the scope of work and discussion of the next steps. This afternoon we heard from Darby Coles and Tara Sundin, and after going through it for quite a long time, we had a slideshow. We sent this to the Community and Economic Development Committee for further discussion. The next item is an ordinance establishing fees for rental registration. City Council adopted ordinance number 2015-03-005 on March 9th, 2015, establishing a rental registration safety inspection program. Based upon council direction, the fee schedule identified in attachment A is proposed. This afternoon, Rick Sepler introduced this ordinance. Committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. The next item is, let's see if I'm going right here. No, this, yeah. We had a discussion this afternoon on the jail proposal. We met with County Executive Jack Lowes and Bill Elfo last Wednesday night. This was brought forward to hear from Chief Cook and Brian Henshaw. We heard from Peter Riffato, Brian Henshaw, and Chief Cook on all sorts of tax questions, on everything that's possible. This probably won't be on our agenda for a while because the county's got to do a lot of their work, and I think it was pretty much agreed upon by this council that before we take a vote on this, we have to have a lot of questions answered. There has to be a lot of back and forth, and when the county council takes an official vote, then the city council would entertain the possibility of doing it the same thing. But there's a lot of work to be done. Mr. Lowes and his committee's got a tough haul. They've got 8 jurisdictions to go through, plus the Whatcom County Council. So this item is going to be thoroughly vetted before we sign on. So it's going to be a long couple months for no, it's not a done deal. Anybody, they've got a lot of hurdles to go through. So that's the old line out there. Everything's a done deal. Well, those of us that sit up here know that everything's not always a done deal. So anyway, yes, Jack.
Just as a point of information for the audience is that the first of 3 county council meetings will happen on March 31st.
March 31st, the first one. Okay. Okay. The next item was a presentation on Access Bellingham Training Program. The City of Bellingham awarded a contract to EJ Visuals to create a video training program to support Access Bellingham. This afternoon we heard from the owner of EJ Visuals. He showed us a brief little video that was well done, and the fiscal impact is $45,000, $35,000 to pay from PEG franchise fees and $10,000 from PEG equipment fund. And it's going to be exciting, because if the video was anything that we can see on Channel 10, that's going to be a good thing. So. Okay, the next was a presentation by Brian Henshaw, our finance director, and he provided information only on our financial situation. The short of it is we are still experiencing some flat B&O taxes and sales tax. We're still not keeping track. We're not keeping pace with expenditures. That's a red line we have to look at. And if I'm not mistaken, Brian, you did say that the trend for sales tax and B&O the first couple months weren't that bad? A couple percent?
Yeah.
Something like
1% for B&O, 2%.
2% for B&O. Okay, that's something we'll have to keep an eye on come budget time. Any other comments on that? Okay. Oh, Dan, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something on the jail thing or not? Was it?
I'm happy to read what I said this afternoon.
Well, you asked me, yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead and do that. I'm sorry. I forgot to acknowledge it. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So I did make these comments this afternoon. I do feel it's important to bring these up again tonight. So when we are faced with whether or not to support the new jail that is being proposed, we must examine the underlying issues that create the need for considering such a facility. There are two primary drivers or causes for this. That's drug and alcohol addiction and mental health illness. And since the presentation by Executive Lows last week, I've done some research and would like to share my findings. I'd like to credit Dr. Elia Moore, an epidemiologist and associate director at Whatcom Alliance for Healthcare Advancement, for her research. A lot of what she's done is in this report that I'm about to give you. Whatcom County ranks number 4 in treatment hospitalizations for prescription opiates. That's two times the state number. And Whatcom County also ranks number 3 in treatment hospitalizations for heroin. That's 3 times the state number. And these alarming statistics were specifically called out in the Whatcom County Community Health Assessment using data prepared by the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Institute at the University of Washington. It is undeniable that we have an opiate and prescription painkiller drug problem in Whatcom County. The crisis is due to the lack of connection between addicts and available treatment resources, and there are several factors driving this crisis. Number 1, there were major cutbacks in funding for chemical dependency treatment over the last year. As a result, providers have been leaving the community, discontinuing or severely limiting their services. Number 2, there are no inpatient or residential treatment facilities in Whatcom County. This is the glaring hole that exists both upstream and downstream from whatever jail facility ends up being built. Number 3, there are few providers in our community who can prescribe chemical dependency treatment medications, and they are taking new patients in an extremely limited fashion. Number 4, there is no community-based coordinated network to connect the people who need the services with the few service outlets that exist in the community. In looking at more local evidence, the Whatcom County jail system is a major provider of health care in our community. In 2012, the jail logged 838 physician exams, 3,600 nurse exams, 3,100 mental health referrals, and 232 transfers to Peace Health St. Joseph Medical Center. The county estimates that 75% of jail inmates have a mental health illness or chemical dependency disorder or both, and that overwhelming majority of bookings occur when the inmate is under the influence of drugs or alcohol. A substantial proportion of inmates also struggle with chronic homelessness and multiple chronic diseases and comorbidities. While I was preparing these remarks yesterday, I was contacted by a board member for the Alzheimer's Society of Washington. She said, all too often our law enforcement officials are called to the home of an individual with dementia because they have suddenly lashed out at their spouse to the point of frightening or hurting them. The choices for law enforcement are to take these individuals to jail or to drop them off at the local emergency room, both of whom are ill-equipped to deal with individuals who have dementia. When inmates are released from jail, they are given some support to assimilate back into the community. However, given the major health and socioeconomic barriers some of these individuals now must face on their own, this is simply not enough support. As a result, they turn to the emergency department and hospital for help, which are not designed to provide adequate care for these individuals. A substantial proportion return to the jail. To break this cycle in 2012, the county identified 25 individuals in aggregate, or who had consumed in aggregate 1,972 police officer contacts, 252 emergency medical service phone calls, 379 jail bookings, and 9,617 jail days in the previous years. That's 25 individuals. The total estimated cost of these services was well over $1 million. Note that this total does not include the health care costs incurred by the emergency department and the hospital for these individuals. Through a partnership between the Opportunity Council and law enforcement, these 25 people were provided with case management and housing services. The result was a 63% reduction in police contacts, 92% reduction in jail bookings, and a 99% reduction in jail days. So then we need to ask ourselves, what kind of community do we want to live in? If we are okay with the status quo, continuing to incarcerate people at a steadily growing rate while doing nothing or very little to address the substance disorder treatment crisis that is a major driver of recidivism to the jail, then okay, let's proceed. We then must be willing to expand the jail again in short order at taxpayer expense. But if we want to disrupt the trend, then let's explore options of how we address the underlying issues. We must treat the disease and not its symptoms. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Sorry I didn't recognize you. Next time, just throw your coffee cup at me.
Will do.
Okay, the next item is the consideration of a resolution expressing concern about the content or process of adoption of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. The executive branch of the U.S. government is a participant in negotiations with 11 other nations to create a Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement governing trade and other rules for these Pacific Rim nations. This agreement would affect trade rules and would also have an impact on other areas of policy, including domestic regulation. The City Council requested that staff develop a resolution based on examination of resolutions adopted by other cities. A resolution was attached for council consideration this afternoon. The City Council unanimously accepted this resolution to bring forward tonight, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those, what? You're not going anywhere. You're doing this. I mean,
Well,
go ahead. That doesn't
well,
matter. Go ahead.
This afternoon, there's a presentation on it. I just want
Yes.
to mention some of the things there. This is an unusual trade agreement in the sense that historically tariffs have been lowered all across the world. It's not about lowering tariffs anymore. It's about the non-tariff barriers. And that's where it gets into affecting what our government can do. One of the proposals, which may or may not be in the agreement, is these international tribunals that will have a veto over what our domestic government and domestic businesses and domestic workers can experience. It's that veto power that is seen as interfering with our local sovereignty, which is worrisome to many. And equally worrisome is we're not actually sure of the details because this is being negotiated in secret, and Congress appears to be binding itself to an up or down vote where there will be no debate allowed. So the resolution calls for greater transparency and openness on what the agreement is and concern with the fast-track authority. So the resolution isn't necessarily against the TPP because no one knows quite what's in it yet. It really is about the process that's going forward and concerns of what might be in the agreement.
Thank you, Michael. Okay. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. Okay, we now go to approval of minutes. We have March 9th, regular session of the City Council to approve.
Move approval.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion or corrections or additions? Or Michael's looking real fast. You're our designated proofreader. If it gets by you, it's okay. Okay. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Old or new business tonight? Oh, that's right. You said, no, I think, yes, sir.
I just wanted to report what I brought out
Yes.
as old business this afternoon, which was that 2 weeks ago when I was honoring and acknowledging the people that worked on the rental registration and safety inspection program, I listed out scores of people, but I did not list out one of our main advocates and supporters of this program, who was our own staff policy analyst, Mark Gardner. And he did a remarkable job of framing the issue and providing us with excellent research material, and continues to go and provide support to the planning staff as the implementation is moving forward. And I just want to, again, give a shout out to Mark for the excellent work that he's done since 2008.
Thank you. Pinky?
I just wanted to let the council know that I am going to be submitting a letter to our state legislature. Last week they had hearings on oil transportation safety, and on Monday they had House Bill 1449, and on Wednesday the Senate heard Bill 5087. And I'm going to send a letter in support of the House Bill 1449, which I believe has much stricter safety regulations and a broader ability for the state to conduct rail inspections and more financial protections. So I can share that letter with you. I do not know the deadline for documents submission on that, but I'm going to put my name forward with a letter from me. So I can share that if anyone else has interest.
Okay. Anybody else hold a new business? Madame Mayor.
Thank you, Monsieur President.
Where's the French wine if we're going to talk like that?
Something like that. There has been a lot of discussion recently about the for-hire drivers issue. I imagine many of you have been contacted by one of the companies that wants to see if we can adjust our code to allow that to happen in Bellingham. And mainly, our existing code does not allow that type of business. So it's like Uber car or Uber or Lyft. And I was just bringing it forward for the council to see if you would like to have a discussion about it and look at changing that or not.
Council, yes? Yes. Wait a minute. Roxanne, then Michael. I'm sorry.
I am really hopeful that we can look at this, because I've watched what the city of Spokane and other jurisdictions have done that have regulations that go against this, but have done temporary memorandums of understanding. And an MOU that we could do with Uber, I think, would be majorly helpful for two things that I'll say really quickly. We need to move people out of our downtown at 2 a.m. when they get let out of the bars. I think that's one of the major problems, is the taxi services aren't able to accommodate all these people, so we need alternatives for service. Another reason I'm really excited about the potential of Uber is they will only pick up the person who has sent the message in to require the service. This could really help for our people who are disabled, and they rely on taxis and other kinds of services to get around. So I'm excited about talking about that.
Michael.
I think this will be an important discussion. My understanding is that our current regulations actually probably do a fine job of regulating the drivers for hire that Uber uses. What our code doesn't cover is the dispatch service. And frankly, I'm not interested in crafting our rules to give kind of a special accommodations for one dispatch service over another. I think we need to be very neutral, if we adjust our regulations at all, to not play favorites with one model over another, but to continue to regulate drivers for hire as we already do, which is for safety and vehicle inspections and criminal background checks, all the basic things. I don't think we need to change those.
Well, and just to be clear, that's why I gave two examples, because this is not for just one company. It would regulate, all of them. And Roxanne, I did talk to them, having just been through some experiences with my parents where it was very difficult to move them from here to there, and asked if there was that service, if that service would potentially be available, because I think it would be very helpful. They don't have anything, they weren't talking about anything now, but I think that would be a market niche that would be popular in our city.
Okay.
Okay, so
well, you have your direction to bring that forward.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else under old or new business? Okay, we will now go to the executive session report. We had 4 items. The first is a potential property acquisition. Staff provided information on the potential acquisition of 17.51 acres owned by Cordata Investments, LLC, and 3.25 acres owned by Darcy Investors, Inc., located on the east side of Cordata Parkway between Stewart and Horton Roads. The city will use the property for a park. I will now entertain a motion. And Julie Guy, you better be watching. I will now entertain a motion to authorize the purchase of 20.76 acres at its appraised value of $3,620,000.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Jack?
I have been noticing the incredible volume of people moving through Squalicum Creek Park, which is our latest big park acquisition. It's phenomenal, especially knowing that only 1/3 of the park is open right now. It's just really amazing. But I also lament about the fact that the distance between Cordata Park and Squalicum Creek Park is the same as where we are to Chuckanut Ridge.
Why did I think you were going to bring that?
It's that far. I mean, you know, it's a fairly healthy drive in order just to get to Squalicum Creek Park, which a lot of people would think, oh, well, that's the North Side Park. Well, there's other areas of town that are not being served that are on the north side. This particular addition will, I think, be a tremendous asset to the people that live on the real north part of our town. It is in a location off of Cordata Parkway that is going to be very easy to develop. It will have vehicle access, it will have flat lands, it will have not as many environmental restrictions to it. It will have the opportunity for real recreational opportunities as well as open space and trails. It will be, I mean, the Cordata neighborhood currently does have a park, but it's not developed yet. It just has land, and it has one trail through and a couple picnic tables in there, and that's about it. They can't get any more because they don't have vehicle access into it. This resolves that problem, and they will be able, I think, relatively soon. My understanding is that we'll have park impact fees to go and do a master plan for this new site soon, and that we hopefully will be able to develop that in a lot faster way than we've been able to do Cordata Park. So I really am encouraged by this, and it's like a real gift to the north side.
Mr. Lilliput.
I guess I'm a bit more of a glass half full kind of guy than Jack. I'm really pleased with this. This is, in my mind, is the near completion of the Greenways promise that was made in 2006. We said we were going to spend twice as much money on the north side and the south. We're going to finally rectify the fact that there just was not enough parkland up there, major parks and minor parks up on the north side of the city. This is the fulfillment of that promise. And I also want to indicate to people, this is not money we just suddenly have to go and find. This, again, is part of the money that the voters set aside in 2006 when they made that vote. That money has been waiting and earmarked in the strategic plan for a north side acquisition of this sort, and that's where the money is coming from, and that's what it's used for. So I think the glass actually is almost all the way full right now. We are actually fulfilling the promise of the Greenways, and I would like to thank the Greenways Committee for keeping the faith and the Parks Department for keeping the faith and doing the work this last decade.
Roxanne.
I just want to say, I know several of us have heard from our wonderful community members in the northern part of our city, and we have built an understanding about this project, and it's been so hard to contain this information. All we could say is, we're working on it. We swear we're working so hard on it. And it's so great to finally get to the point where we can deliver this news to that wonderful community, because we're going to continue to support that community for all that we do.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. The next item is potential property acquisition. Staff provided information on a potential property acquisition. Direction given, no action was taken. The third item was litigation in a workers' compensation claim. Staff provided information and advice on the litigation matter. Information only, no action taken. The third item was New Singular Wires, PCS LLC versus City of Bellingham, Whatcom County Superior Court, number 13-2-01599-1. Staff providing an update on this litigation matter. Direction given. No action was taken. Mayor's report.
Thank you, Council, for taking action on the park. Jack and I were, was it 2 years ago, at a Cordata meeting, and of course, they've been talking about this, their park, forever. And they'd waited, at that point, 16 years. And I think that they're going to be thrilled that they're actually going to have an accessible park now, because it doesn't have to have an expensive road like Horton Road built so that people can drive their cars there. So I know Julie's watching. I'm sure she is. So thank you very much. I'm very excited about this, and I appreciate it. The other thing I want to do, we just talk a little bit about what happens downtown. Western Washington University is opening another downtown presence. You probably maybe have already heard about it, but I just wanted to make the announcement again. They're very excited. They're going to have the corner offices in the historic Herald building, and they have all kinds of plans. The woman that is in charge went through lists of I don't know how many things. She can hardly contain herself. So I think it'll be a very lively corner on State Street, and it's really another opportunity to show the relationship between the university and the city, and they're very interested in building on those kind of relationship things. So I just thought I'd let other people know on BTV 10 if they hadn't heard, but I was sure that most of you already had. So I don't have any appointments today.
Well, thank you for the very short mayor's report.
You're welcome.
Consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Final consideration of ordinances. How many more meetings? 7?
7.
That smile off your face.
Almost 6.
Huh? My goodness.
Short timer. Agenda Bill 20746, an ordinance amending the 2015-2016 adopted budget, excuse me, increasing revenue in the Environmental Remediation Fund by $1 million for 2015 as a result of a grant award from the Department of Ecology for the R.G. Haley site cleanup, and appropriating $1 million in related expenditures for 2015 in the Public Works Department Solid Waste Remediation Group.
Move third and final.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Roxanne Murphy.
Aye.
Pinky Vargas.
Aye.
Jack Weiss.
Aye.
Terry Borneman.
Aye.
Dan Hamel.
Aye.
Gene Knutson.
Aye.
Michael Lillquist.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0. Agenda Bill 20756, an ordinance of the City of Bellingham, Washington relating to the city's regulation of Bellingham Harbor and repealing rules governing facilities operated by the Port of Bellingham, codified in Bellingham Municipal Code, BMC 12.08.080.
Move third and final.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye. Aye.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Roll call.
It's late,
I
Gene.
was watching the mayor yawn and I kind of lost it. Go ahead, Linda. I'm sorry.
Pinky Vargas.
Aye.
Jack Weiss.
Aye.
Terry Borneman.
Aye.
Dan Hamel.
Aye.
Gene Knutson.
Aye.
Michael Lillquist.
Aye.
Roxanne Murphy.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0. Now there's 6 meetings left.
Thank you very much. The next meeting of the Bellingham City Council will be April 6, 2015. Meeting adjourned. Yes, we are.